What up, y'all? It's your dude, Born Shining. Just wanted to drop a line and say howdy. Um, First, I want to give a shout out to the universe. Thank you, universal life force, my ancestors, spirit guides, spirit animals, Jesus and the Ascended Masters, archangels, Ra, crossover loved ones. I want to say thank you. I love you, and I appreciate the help that I've been gifted. Uh, Even though I'm not perfect, I appreciate the help. Um, So yeah, we're gonna. This is just gonna be quick, a quick booyah, um, for I don't know anybody who finds this. Um, yeah, dude. Uh, we're all born shining. We're all born shining. What's that really mean? Is I'm born shining. You're born shining. We're all born shining. And if anybody tries to tell you otherwise, they're probably part of the ops. You know, anybody that's trying to convince you of a weakness or a limitation or a fault is not your friend. You know what I mean? Anybody who's making excuses for these things is not your friend. All right? And I'm learning I'm learning that the hard way, you know? Um, in my life, I'm just sounds sounds crazy to even say it because it's so obvious now. It's so obvious that like if people it's just really obvious. If they're not working for you, then they're working against you. You know what I mean? If they're not on board with where you're going, if you're the one driving the boat and they don't like where you're going, these people, instead of jumping off the boat, they try to take the boat from you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to recognize like how these people operate, and they're sick, man. These narcissistic people, it's a clinical it's a disorder. You know what I mean? It's a personality disorder. You know what I'm saying? It's not like these people are just making mistakes. Like, this is a psychological state of mind that people walk around with, looking for people to take advantage of and fuck over. Emotional fuckery, for lack of a better term. It's emotional fuckery. All right? I'm not making this for kids. It's not PG. So that ain't that ain't me. I'm not going to make that promise right now. But yeah, man. It's emotion. It's just narcissism. It's a disorder. And the only way these people can get away with it is because it's all throughout. It's at every level. These people have kind of like rooted themselves into our ways of life because they know how people are taught to act. And that's why you shouldn't be limited to the rules, because the rules are only going to get you into situations where they're used against you. You know what I mean? Like in my last situation, I just had somebody, you know, we made children. We made children together, and it wasn't a pretty ending. I'll admit that. I'm not perfect, all right? But at the end of the day, I know what narcissism is, and I'm pretty sure my ex is a narcissist. And so, am I gonna, you know, leave my children with her willingly? Fuck no. Hell to the no. All right? But what happens when you have children and you go to court or whatever? Yeah, there's custody and stuff. And so, I'm under the impression that this person created some falseness, some falsities around my character, and was waiting for me to drop into the custody hearing and hit me with these legal charges or whatever, uh, about me being a pervert or whatever the case may be, and losing my shit. And so this person was going to use this legal system against me because the standard operating procedure is that you go to custody. You know what I mean? Whether it's mediation or there's a judge involved or whatever the case may be, that's how it goes. Which just kind of it's kind of mind blowing to me that I understand that if you're not getting along and you need a divorce, you're probably not going to be able to agree on a lot of things. You know what I mean? But the children, that's non-negotiable. The children are for sure the most important element of, if they're present, then they're the most important element, and it should matter what happens to them, and not just matter, but they should that should take precedent over whatever the parents want. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's best for the children at on some levels is pretty objective. You know, it's like if the mom is an alcoholic and not working, but the standard operating procedure is that the children go to the women. That's a fucked up scenario. And now the guy has to pay child support to an alcoholic, and he's pretty much just feeling an alcoholic dependency and funding this, while the children are with an alcoholic getting neglected just because standard operating procedure. Now, I'm sure some of you out there are going to say, oh, that's crazy, that doesn't happen. Nah, I'm pretty sure it happens a lot more often than you would care to admit, because people are good at hiding stuff. People are good at hiding things, and also, more believe it or not, there's systems in place. It's called corruption, where you can pay people. You can have, I mean, whether you're going to just pay them directly or you're going to do magic on them. Yeah, I said magic. Magic, that's right. Yeah, black magic. I don't know about where your family comes from, but my family comes from Louisiana. One of my ancestors earned her freedom healing her master's sick wife, you know. And so people, she wasn't doing, I mean, it is voodoo. It's just a power. It's just like anything else. Like, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. It's like your lighter. You can use it to light your cigar or you can use it to burn down your house. It's not gonna it's not the lighter's fault. And so these energies and the way people use them, you know, it's not the energy's fault. It's the people who are using them. And so yeah, there's people who are doing magic on court officials in the justice system. There's people falsifying documents. There's people who are just straight up corrupt and just do anything for money. So it's not always so black and white. Speaking of black and white, topics of race, we'll get into that another day, but that's another bunch of bullshit. So yeah, so I don't know where he's going with that, but these people, they're not your friends, man. Narcissists exist at all levels. There's narcissists in interpersonal relationships that you need to watch out for, but then there's narcissists at the world stage, and those are people that we also need to look out for. And those, I would say, are more dangerous because they operate on on a level. They operate on the level. They are shifting and dictating the control of lots of resources. So it's important to these people get kept in check. We got to be aware that these people exist, and the cream, not all the, it's not always the cream that rises to the top. You know what I'm saying? And on the one hand, it's something to be mindful of, and on the other hand, you have to focus on more than just that. It's not enough to say like, oh, these people are creeps and they're doing all this heinous stuff. That's not enough. You have to do something about it. You have to organize. You have to do something about it. You have to have solutions in place for these other things. And I believe, like, I tend to see and feel that if we would just organize and agree on what it is that we don't want, the solutions would be pretty obvious as we got closer to being more in control of our own our own fate. Why does it have to be one size fits all? You know, de Tocqueville talked about when he visited the United States in the early 1700s. It was a, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it was like a collage of tiny republics, you know, and even the state, I would imagine, is pretty large when you consider how many towns and small localities there are. And it's like, would anybody, why would anybody who's not there have any kind of say in anything that happens there? How does that even make any sense? Somebody who's not where you're living is going to make or have an input on the way that you're living? It doesn't make any sense. So that's how I see things going. I see things going back to uh, the little republics. But it ties back into narcissists, because these are the kinds of things that narcissists were gonna it's gaslighting. They'll tell you, oh yeah, this is important, or oh yeah, I agree with you, like that's something that we got to work on, or oh yeah, but nothing ever happens. So at what point do you realize, like, oh, nothing's happening here, and you just cut your losses and you fire the guy and you go on to your next candidate, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? It's like these people who are president, especially right now, they don't, whether or not they're there in the first place legally is a whole other question, but let's just assume he made it there fair and square. Okay, you got to so you're telling me that after all of these years of presidents and all these years of all of these mistakes that people have made, it's not like we're not going to have a president that's like, I mean, Donald Trump, as far as the presidency goes, I think he did a fantastic job of just getting shit done. And, in that regard, he made it look kind of easy, because he just had to do something, just do anything productive, you know? And you're already surpassing all of these people that have come before, who have only managed to make things worse. And the president is not even really responsible for the things that happen in government. He's just a figurehead. So, I mean, in terms of Donald Trump's performance, whatever he could do is what he did. Whatever was in his ability to do, that's what he did. You can't just wave a magic wand and fix everything, because that's not how government works. There's checks and balances. So if you're out there talking about, oh, the president's ruining the country and all this shit, it's like, you obviously don't know how the fuck anything works. You probably shouldn't be voting if that's the case. If you're out here talking about how the president is ruining everything, you shouldn't be able to vote, because that's not how it works. Okay? And again, that comes back to the idea that the information that you have about everything pretty much is probably wrong. You know what I mean? Because that's a really obvious one. Like, the president he's not a fucking emperor. He's the president. He can't just do whatever the hell he wants. And if he does, there's these things called checks and balances. Why is there no accountability? You know? That's why the government is separated into three branches. But you know what gets talked about very, very not as much? Doesn't get talked about as much as the three branches of government. There's a fourth. Uh-huh. There's a fourth check and balance. And you know what that's called? That's called you and me. You and me. And all these people who are out here. The sleeping giant. That's what they call it. The sleeping giant. And you know why? Just take a guess. It's because when the giant wakes up, meaning when people wake up and realize what the hell is going on. How many stories do you hear of people surviving giants? Not many. There's one in particular that I can think of, that ended favorably for people, but then that guy went on to be a king, David. So, as far as I know, giants typically come out on top. You know what I mean? And in this case, uh, I would have to agree. I think that we would be the winner because that's how it's designed. It's designed to respond to us. It's designed to uh, answer to us. The problem is, how do you get all these people to agree on a fucking thing? How do you get all these people to agree on any goddamn thing? Hmm? And then we start talking about all these groups and all these progressive movements and how none of this stuff works, and it's because it's not meant to work. It's because people, these groups, they start out good intentioned, well intentioned, but then they get infiltrated by people who don't have any interest in seeing the group survive. Now, who do you think that would be? Probably the government, the FBI, the CIA. I don't know. People are afraid of saying those letters, but it's well done. It's not like I'm making stuff up. They infiltrate the groups to break them apart, which makes it even more important that people are aware of these tactics, these psychological, emotional tactics that people use to drive other people crazy and get in arguments. It's not just happening in your interpersonal life. It's not just happening with your lover. All right, it's happening in your government. It's